Hello there, people of the internet. I am out here with an SKS chambered in 7.62 by 39. I will go ahead and we'll show clear here. And just because of the types of people that I attract, or the types of content that I make, I see repeatedly, all the time, whenever I make SKS videos, how people will pick an SKS over a more modern platform like, say, an AR or an AK. And I figured I'd go ahead and I'd throw my 2 cents into this argument as to whether or not that is a good idea. So if you'd like to hear that, and you like this kind of content, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, because you're among the right crowd. And I'm sure that you guys have noticed, this is not my usual recording setup. Well, just due to some recent events, my normal range is no longer available to me. If you'd like to help me get back out to a range, then down in the description I have a Patreon page and a place to go buy some merch, shirt designs that I've made, or you could just do a one-time donation through the merch store. So whenever it comes to the SKS, chambered in 7.62 by 39, that's going to send approximately a 123 grain projectile at about 2,400 or so feet per second, and that particular cartridge is effective out to about 400 yards for the average shooter. There are people out there who can send that cartridge out to further distances, but the average shooter, their limitation is pretty much about that 400 yards. We're looking at a milled receiver, fixed magazine. Of course, you could get aftermarket magazines for the SKS. With my experience, those tend to not work all that well, though. So, there are some pros to this platform. It is semi-automatic, so yeah, you got that going for you. It's not like a bolt-action system like, say, the Mosin Nagant, and the standard military magazine holds 10 rounds as opposed to the Mosin's 5. Granted, the Mosin does fire a more powerful cartridge. 7.62 by 39 is plenty potent to be able to handle most things, unless you're going after something like big game. Lots of pros for this thing right here. Stripper clips. Since you can carry ammunition on stripper clips in comparison to magazines, you can carry more ammunition for the same amount of weight. As a matter of fact, I made a video a little while ago talking about exactly that, and I did some math, and I think it equated to about a 50% increase in ammunition if you carried rounds around on stripper clips, as opposed to inside of, say, AK-47 magazines, assuming that we're talking about 7.62 by 39 and not some other different cartridge. Now, if you want to bump up to a more modern comm block cartridge like, say, 5.45, then we'll go ahead and we'll save that particular thing for another argument. We're going to go ahead and talk about the SKS for 223 or the AK in 7.62 by 39. I imagine that fans of the SKS would probably pick the AK over the AR because they enjoy that particular cartridge, but well, let's go ahead and talk about a couple of things here. My personal opinion, I think that 7.62 by 39 is probably the best cartridge that your average shooter is going to want to get. They're incredibly readily available, not a whole lot of money to get your hands on some of them. They're still pretty gosh darn light recoiling. The platforms that they are utilized in are very capable. There's even AR platforms out there chambered in 7.62 by 39. I don't foresee the round going anywhere anytime soon. They're accurate out to 400 yards. Most shooters aren't going to be shooting past that, and most shooters don't go after large game. So the average shooter should be able to make plenty use of 7.62 by 39. It's kind of on par with, say, 30-30 Winchester, a little bit more range. But for many years, 30-30 Winchester here inside the United States was the standard de facto cartridge. So 7.62 by 39 should be able to do the job for most of your average shooters. The SKS platform, well, it's legal in all 50 states, 10-round magazine, no fancy features or anything like that, assuming that, you know, you don't have any sort of bayonet attached to the rifle or anything like that. This right here is a really good platform if you find yourself in a restrictive state. But I actually made a video not that long ago talking about how just because something is forced to be used does not make it the best. It just makes it the best for that particular situation. So if you had the choice to pick between an SKS or a modern AR or AK variant, then why would you pick the SKS over the modern AK or AR? The one thing that I could see is the stripper clips, which allows you to hold more ammunition. But would you rather have more ammunition on your person but have to reload more often with your 10-round magazine, Or would you rather have less ammunition and 30 round capacity and much faster, much smoother reloads, like, say, in an AK platform? For the people who are going to bring up the aftermarket magazines, if you're going to carry a bunch of aftermarket magazines that are filled with ammunition, then you kind of negate the whole stripper clip argument. And not only that, but if you carry a bunch of those magazines have this extra protrusion that clips into the SKS right here, and they're really, really awkward to carry around. They're just not designed to be carried around like that. Or you could have your 30-round magazine for your SKS and then load those with stripper clips, but that would take a significant amount of time to be able to reload that rifle. Reloading one of these with a 10-round magazine with one single stripper clip takes more time than an AK-47 reload. So there's some cons whenever it comes to the reload system for the SKS. It's definitely not something that I would want to take into a modern combat situation. So, yeah, the SKS not necessarily something that I would recommend for a modern style situation. Now, like I said, there are people out there who are going to tell me, hey, the SKS is being used in Ukraine, so it must be fine. Remember, just because it's forced to be used does not make it ideal. That just makes it a better than nothing sort of situation. So 7.62x39 is going to be more powerful than something like a 223.556. 223.556 is going to have the advantage whenever it comes to long range accuracy. But well, yeah, there's a lot of pros and cons with basically every sort of platform. If we're talking short, close range kind of stuff, CQB or urban combat or something like that, 7.62x39 shines quite a bit in comparison to, say, 55 or 62 grain 223.556. Granted, there's some specialty 223.556 out there, like 77 to 85 grain projectiles that are designed to fragment and tear stuff apart pretty gosh darn effectively, and they do that job very, very well, and they're on par with 7.62x39 and its capabilities. But ammunition like that is going to be expensive and hard to come by, and most people aren't going to be using that. They're going to be leaning more towards your standard 55 or 62 grain projectiles, and most people are going to be leaning towards your standard military full metal jacket 123 grain projectiles out of your 7.62x39. So the 7.62x39 definitely has the power advantage in comparison to 223.556, but that 223.556 in your AR platform here in the United States is going to be dramatically more popular, and it's going to be dramatically easier to reload and dramatically easier to accessorize. If you got yourself an SKS, mounting optics on one of these things, it can be difficult. There's no real good way or spot to mounting optic onto this thing. Or red dot, I mean, you could do kind of a scout style scope up here if you were to replace the rear sight with a Picatinny rail or something and mount an optic to that. But it's just not going to be as effective as, say, the AR platform, which is designed, well, not originally designed, but modern AR platforms are designed with Picatinny rails built directly into the receiver to allow for good, stable optic mounts at proper positions. It just lends itself to being good for accessories. Not only that, but most of your modern AR platforms or even modern AK platforms are going to have all sorts of rail systems on these things that are going to be designed to take lights, lasers, like insert your choice of good and accessory that you would want mounted to your gun, because there's a lot to pick from. Not all of them I would recommend, but I'm sure I'll have people go in the comments and they'll tell me, hey, you could just sporterize the thing, bubba that thing to make it more accessible. But by that point, you're just getting to the point of doing what the AR and the AK do anyway. Like, the whole point of the SKS is to have an SKS, but if you're going to have an SKS and just turn it into an AR or an AK, then you're essentially just admitting that the people who use the AR and AK are correct, because they have more capacity and they have, you know, ways to mount various things to their rifles. So from like a combat practicality standpoint, no, the SKS is absolutely not something that you would want to bring into a modern day situation, especially if you're going up against a modern military force. However, that all being said, the SKS would make a fantastic little survivalist rifle. Like this right here, 7.62x39, hard-hitting round. You could take plenty of game with it. It's incredibly reliable. The ammunition is fairly lightweight, especially in comparison to, say, 7.62 NATO. 7.62 NATO is significantly larger and heavier than 7.62 by 39. There's a reason why 7.62 by 39 is known to be an intermediate cartridge. It's just the SKS would make a fantastic little survivalist rifle. With it being semi-automatic, you could take multiple shots at game if you need to. It's just not necessarily something that I would want to rely on in, you know, taking on a modern force with modern equipment, etc., etc. Is it something that I would feel undergunned with if it was forced into being used in those particular situations? No, not necessarily. You could definitely do smart things to stop yourself from getting shot while putting yourself in vantage points to allow you to be able to do the job with the SKS. But just because the SKS can do the job does not make it ideal for doing the job. I could nail a nail into my wall using a brick, or I could use a hammer. One of those is going to be significantly better and easier to use than the other. So just because it can do the job, just because it's forced into doing something, does not make it ideal. And the SKS is definitely not going to be ideal in terms of a combat situation. But for a practicality, survivalist situation, yeah, dude, this right here would be just a great little rifle. They're relatively lightweight. They fire a relatively powerful bullet. They can shoot at pretty good distances. If you get yourself one with a bayonet attached to it, then guess what? Now you have yourself a bayonet, and you can go around and you can poke things as, you know, needed poking. These right here have built-in cleaning kits to where you could clean and maintain your firearm. They're easy to disassemble. Granted, the parts in them are a little small and easy to lose, but yeah, it's a great little rifle, and it's not very expensive to use. You could stockpile ammunition for this thing. No problem. And if you're not worried about having to reload fast because there's people shooting at you and you could reload at your leisure, then walking around with a bunch of ammunition on stripper clips is absolutely a good way to go. I'm sure I'll have people hop into the comments and they'll tell me, hey, if you're in a survivalist situation, then you have to be worried about people trying to kill you because people automatically jump towards survivalist situation being equated with like end of the world apocalyptic situations. Well, I was, you know, here in the state of Florida with our last hurricane, and for like 2 weeks or so, like the town was without power. You weren't going out to buy anything in terms of supplies and whatnot. You weren't like they're like you didn't have access to be able to go out and get yourself stuff. The roads were blocked, they were destroyed, trees everywhere. It looked like artillery went through our town with this last hurricane that we just had come through like 2 months ago or so. This is 2023 where I'm recording this. But there was a lot of stuff that was destroyed, and you weren't going out to get supplies. But guess what? There were no gunfights. Nobody was going out trying to kill each other. It wasn't the end of the world. But guess what I did to put meat on the table? Go out and gather some game and whatnot. Just that particular piece of property. I lived next to the woods, and there were all sorts of pigs and hogs and birds and all sorts of stuff back there. And guess what I used? Literally this right here. This right here made a fantastic little rifle for going out and getting myself some meat to put on the dinner table whenever my access to the town was limited. That was a survivalist situation that did not require me going out and fighting a bunch of people. So yeah, I think I've said my piece on this. Let me know what you guys think about this particular subject. I'm sure that people are still going to go down and say, hey, I'd take the SKS over absolutely anything. If you know the platform, you know the platform. Go ahead and go with it. If it's what you want, then, I mean, ignore me. Just because I'm giving my 2 cents about it doesn't mean that you should decide that you don't want it. If you want it, then go ahead and get yourself an SKS. So, all this being said, thanks for watching, folks. I do appreciate your time. Like, subscribe, share. Description below has a link to all sorts of stuff. Go check it out. You guys go off. Have yourself a fantastic day. I will see you guys on the next episode.
Been a little while since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. Poor man's Garen. It's a shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.